Ladies and gentlemen, our speakers for the next session on mapping India's ascent in the realignment of global value chains will be joining us on the dais. May I request you all to please give them a warm welcome.
World trade is changing in many different ways.
I'd now like to request the session chair, Dr. V. Anantha Nageshwaran, to please open the session.
Driven by sustainability imperatives.
Good afternoon. You haven't had enough of me, I think. So I'm back here. But this time, I'm in a slightly better position of being able to ask questions rather than answer them. So I'm going to try and make the full use of it with my distinguished co-panelists here. So we have with us Mr. Guru Prasad Mudlapur, Managing Director of Bosch India. We have Mr. Sunil Mathur, Managing Director and CEO of Siemens Limited. Mr. Deepak Shetty to my far right from CEO and Managing Director of JCB India, and Mr. Banmali Agarwala, Senior Advisor, Tata Sons. So the question that all of us have been and will continue to grapple with is about what's happening to the global value chains, how India can position itself in the global value chain, what would it take, and what is the current state of progress in those areas, and how these gentlemen in their own respective companies and industries have found the changes in global value chains in the last several years, pre-COVID and post-COVID, how they are adapting, and how in their experience India fits in, where, and for it to fit in, what more needs to be done if it is not at the moment part of their global value chains, etc. These are the questions that they will be trying to answer. Of course, each one of them has about 5 minutes to make their initial remarks, and afterwards I'll probably ask them a question or two, and once everybody is done, after maybe a couple of rounds of interactions among ourselves, I will throw it open to you to ask your questions. So without much further ado, I'm going to invite the first person on my list, Mr. Guru Prasad Mudlapur, to make his initial remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, CII, for having me on the panel. Good evening, everyone. I come from Bosch as one of the largest tier ones globally. We believe we are pretty well integrated into the GVC infrastructure. But let me talk about this from the Indian context here. So I'll do it in 3 parts. The first part is about where we see the overall scope as auto components or generally auto industry in India. Then I'll talk about what's happening with the value chain and just sum it up there. So the auto component industry will head towards $3 trillion value overall by 2030, around that. But if we look at how big the Indian auto industry is, it's about 110 billion as the auto industry and only 70 billion as the component industry. Of course, the ambition is to more than double it by 2030 and also increase the share of exports by about 5 times from 20 billion today to almost 100 billion by 2030. And so we are not doing that great. So that's the first ambition here. We, as India, are only 3% of the global exports. We do very little in terms of, so basically we also import about 20 billion, export about 20. So we are sort of net neutral there as the industry, but that's not a good thing. Most auto manufacturing regions around the world are export hubs. except for the United States there. So in terms of where we export, it's largely to the US and to Europe. And in terms of our imports, it's largely from China, Germany, and of course South Korea. The second part of what I want to talk about is that the auto value chain is undergoing a massive disruption. And this is a time in our journey where we see that the amount of changes that are happening now are sort of unprecedented in scale and size. What are some of the contributors? Of course, geopolitics is a big contributor. The trade wars between China and US have contributed to real polarization of the value chain. The topics around shipping, the topics around logistics, and what happens with how goods move also have contributed significantly to the changes in the value chain, especially post-COVID. What we should also not forget is the chip wars which came in, the semiconductor issues which are heating up. And the reason semiconductor becomes such a dominant topic now is because the value of electronics, or the amount of electronics that gets into the cars of the future or the vehicles of the future, explodes in value substantially. And that's a significant reason why semiconductors becomes such a core topic with regard to the automotive value chain. Of course, two other areas which are contributing to this disruption are the introduction of electric vehicles. The whole industry wants to rewrite legacy practices and come over that and do things in a very different way. And of course, there's a lot of new technology getting added into the automotive world. The last part in terms of what is making the auto value chain change so much is also the amount of software that's coming into vehicles of the future. So that's also significantly causing disruptions in terms of how software gets placed, who owns what part of software, and how is software handled and delivered. So that makes a major change in how we see the value chain changing. So overall, I would say these are some of the things I wanted to start off by saying, and I'll take the rest over Q&A.
Thank you, Mr. Guru Prasad, for your initial remarks. And you did point out the fact that exports out of India are relatively smaller proportion, and you did mention two important elements of the value chain for automobiles. One is semiconductors, now the amount of software. So in both these dimensions, what needs to happen for Bosch's exports out of India to rise by 2030, for example?
Okay, so maybe we are an exception in this category. We have one of the largest software GCCs, as they're called, the Global Competence Centers, set up in India already. We sort of export about $1.5 billion of software value, software and product creation value to the rest of the world of Bosch. So in that sense, we are highly integrated or well set up as a GVC, but that's not necessarily true for the rest of the industry. So there is a lot of value in terms of what we can do on software and how that can be plugged into the overall value chain when the cars become more sophisticated in this. And towards that, I think one of the core requirements would be skilling, in terms of how well we as engineers are able to look at advanced technologies, how are we able to put money into R&D, what are we able to do towards building these locally, and also being able to develop them for a wide range of industry. So the cars of the future are likely to be software-defined vehicles. So a lot more needs to be done in terms of how we can integrate right from very basics to user interface and the kind of features we can bring in. So a lot of this can be done.
Thank you. Now I'm going to invite Mr. Sunil Mathur to share his initial thoughts.
Thank you very much. I think the global value chains overall are themselves experiencing a major change over the last couple of years. One of the critical factors that are now coming in is that the global value chain has to be an integrated global value chain, i.e., it needs to be very closely interlinked into the supplies and the final products that are going out. It is also true that global value chains are not restricted to one or two countries only. You have products coming from all across the world, having to be consolidated and then assembled into the final product. So the nature is changing of global value chains. The world is getting smaller. Sustainability is becoming a very clear requirement. Decarbonization, circularity is becoming a critical requirement. And with all those changes, you're also getting this situation of ease of doing business. How easy is it to set up a factory? How easy is it to bring in people? How easy is it to ramp up production? And can you do it at a cost that is competitive, at a quality level that is international, and at a speed level that is lightning? And I think those are the challenges that many companies are having, is how do we combine all that? What we've also got to understand is, for us here in the country, we are competing with many other countries around the world who have similar aspirations to be a part of the global value chain. So what really sets us apart? And I think we have seen that. We have 32 factories in the country. We do 20% exports out of it. But I think the differentiator that we have is this issue of being an integral part of the global value chain, i.e. we start with the design, we go on to the engineering, we move on to the manufacturing, you then go on to software and lifecycle management, and then you go on to the logistical supply to get it all out. And that's very critical, because then you are really an integrated operation and you're able to bring the complete value to the customer, whoever it is. Now, what has changed in the last couple of years? We were stagnant at about 20 factories for a long time, until 2015 or 2017. In the last 10 years, we've doubled the number of factories, and we continue to add factories in India. Now we are adding factories. We've just announced a factory for metro trains manufacturing, which will be primarily for export, right? And we were competing with my sister units in other parts of the world. And the question really is, what is it that set India apart over there? And I think it was a couple of things. The first was, manufacturing is now moving away from just being skilling and labor on the floor. It's moving up the value chain to technology driven. What does that actually mean? Capacity utilizations or the efficiencies in the country, productivities in the country are in the range of around 75%. Manufacturing productivity in the country on an average is around 75%. Using Industry 4.0 and digitalization, global technologies are now able to manufacture with a productivity and quality level of 99.99%. That means the labor arbitrage that we used to enjoy is no longer there, right? Technology is the only thing that will actually get us there. Now, the more you move up that value chain, the more valuable you become as a part of the global environment. India is the software center of the world. India aspires to be the manufacturing hub of the world. If we can bring both of those together, we have a competency that no one else can beat. And that is what we have been doing as we've been adding factory to factory, is bringing really digitalization and the technologies over there to increase the productivity levels, to ensure that there is continuous quality, and to make sure that there is speed in the manufacturing process. What has helped, of course, is the fact that ease of doing business has gotten better. Logistics is getting better. We are not where we should be, but we are on the right path there. So I think those are proof points that are coming up. Final point over there, what is a very strong argument is we have a huge captive market in India. And if we can start selling here in India and be competitive in India, we can be competitive anywhere around the world. I'll stop there.
I think both the first two speakers deserve an extra round of applause for being extremely disciplined with their time allocation as well. So thanks to both of you for that. I think the 2 or 3 points you made were about, first of all, the fact that the number of factories in India by Siemens is increasing. And you highlighted 3 important requirements. One is ease of doing business, ability to bring in people, and how easy it is to ramp up. In all these 3 areas, maybe you can hold back some of your responses for the later time, but in what way in these 3 dimensions have things improved? Could you just share some thoughts, or in what may they need to improve further?
So I think land and labor is still a challenge.
Okay.
Reliability of taxation is a challenge. So in other words, if I want to put up a factory, how soon can I get the land? How soon can I get the labor? How flexible am I in ramping up and down the labor to the requirements? What is the taxation implications of setting up the factory into the final cost of the product? Can I be assured that there is a final clarity on the tax structure that goes into the cost of the product? Can I be assured that in a particular period of time, I will get the land and be able to construct with all the approvals? I think we've gotten much better. Are we there yet? No.
Thank you. Fair points. I'm now going to invite Mr. Deepak Shetty, Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director, JCB India Limited, to share his thoughts on the topic.
Thank you, Honorable CA. I think we are going to discuss this topic, mapping India's ascent in the realignment of GVCs. I want to thank CII for bringing focus on this very important topic. It is very important because we also know that yesterday it found a very good resonance in the Honorable Finance Minister's speech and also the Foreign Minister's speech. GVCs have become a very important feature of the global economy, with almost 2/3 contribution, with all the major countries participating. However, GVCs are going through a major transformation. Rising trade tensions, something you alluded to, technological advancements, environmental concerns, as we see sometimes environmental concerns are also used as trade barriers, which are reshaping the patterns and the dynamics of global production and trade. India today is in a unique position because majority of the countries today are looking at X country plus one strategy. And with a growing domestic market, with a sizable skilled workforce, with a now focus on renewable energy, I think India is really ticking the boxes. There's one other aspect I want to mention. When you look at the global map, sometimes you see the center is somewhere in Europe. But if you really rotate the map a little bit, actually India has a strategic geographical location with access to both Africa, Europe, and South Asia on the other side. And probably this is why we are seeing more and more FDI inflows in India, which are now really transforming the automobile sector, the agriculture equipment sector, the construction equipment sector. And I'm going to speak a little bit more about the construction equipment sector because I represent that, pharmaceuticals, engineering goods. If I specifically speak about construction equipment sector, the way the government has focused on infrastructure development, today India's construction equipment sector is the 3rd largest in the world after North America and China. And this has really helped us develop the construction equipment industry in India. And if you talk about GVC, I think construction equipment sector is a great example. I will specifically speak about JCB, a British company which has invested in India in 1979. India is not only the largest market, is a large market, it is the largest market for JCB around the world, though we are sort of working in 155 countries around the world. If I speak about the export focus, I would say JCB is a great example or embodiment of Atmanirbharta or Make in India for the world, because from India we are now exporting to more than 130 countries. And these machines are of the cutting edge technology. If I speak about what happened before COVID and after COVID, I think it's an absolute transformation. Before COVID, for many years, normally we used to export around 2,000 to 3,000 machines. After COVID, in last 4 years, our exports have grown 300%. What was very heartening last year to see is, along with that growth, 50% of our exports were to North America. Now, you know that in our industry, there is the emission norms, all of them play a role. I'm very proud that our teams are able to deliver products at a global quality in spite of having the challenges on the emission norms. So they are adhering to the highest level of emission norms. Also, the construction equipment, with due regards to my friends from the automobile industry, they are not only on wheels, but they also have to cut and dig. So it puts additional challenge. These machines are with the highest level of IoT. And what is brilliant is, all these machines are designed and developed in our country. And that is something very, very unique. I think time has come for us to move beyond the cost advantage. I think that is given. From the cost advantage, we have to now talk about the quality advantage. And with a lot of humility, I want to mention that we have got 23 factories around the world. I can very proudly say that the quality standards at the Indian factories are, if not better, are comparable to the best of the quality that have in the world. And that is probably why it is helping us develop the export market. If I specifically talk about the supply chain, and this is something which the Honorable CA alluded to, I think industry has to play a very important role. I'll give an example. The backhoe loader, which is sometimes called the JCB, that particular product, 96% of the components are manufactured in India. And because of which it gave us a huge advantage during COVID times, when the supply chain lines became constricted or became long, we could still adhere to our requirements and we could of our customers, and we could still export. But on the flip side, I think he referred to the Mittelstand earlier. I think it's a great example. I'm so proud about our MSME partners, the small manufacturers, who have all sort of graduated to a particular level of quality. Today I can tell you that we cannot build a machine in our 11 factories in UK or our factory in America, USA or in Brazil without receiving components from suppliers from India. That is a role that the Indian MSME industry, and sometimes I think the OEMs get a lot of credit, but the MSME partners have played a stellar role in developing this capability. And I'm sure as we move ahead in our journey on participating more on the global GVC, this industry is really going to be the backbone of that particular initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deepak Shetty. This is very, very proud story for India's presence in the global value chain in your sector. Two things I want to sort of ask you to comment on. You said India's location, geographic location, is a very conducive one. And the second thing you said was most of the components that go into your final product are sourced from within the country. So therefore, can you say that as far as your business is concerned, India's ascent in the global value chain is complete, or is there some more elements left? And how are you taking advantage of the geographic location both for sourcing of inputs if necessary and also for your export strategy?
I think it's a very good question, and actually I was just mulling over something similar. I was just thinking, during COVID times there was a time when I was tracking a flight which was flying from Cincinnati to Winnipeg and from Winnipeg to India because our ECU chips were on that. And I'm very confident that once Banwali and Tata Sons complete their ECU related investment semiconductor, I don't have to track those flights anymore. and similarly, some of the complicated stuff like injectors or IoT, I'm sure Guru Prasad and the Bosch team are going to sort it out in India. So what I wanted to say is there are still elements at the higher end of the technology on which we are dependent outside, but it's very heartening to see everyday new announcement being made in India to sort of, even those areas are not out of our reach now, and we'll be able to source them locally.
Thank you. And the final word is with you, Mr. Banwali Agarwala. Over to you.
Thank you so much. As I just realized, I was the only representative of an Indian company sitting on the dais. But I want to underscore the point that I think the opportunity that as an Indian company we see on the world stage in adding tremendous value to this whole discussion on global value chains is enormous. Let me just start by saying that we as the Tata Group truly believe in the promise that India has to offer. All the newer businesses that we are looking at, be it aviation, be it electronics, be it building a completely new communication stack in 4G, etc., a digital platform, electric vehicles, batteries, building the first airplane in the private sector. These are all bold and significant bets, and we do so because we believe in the promise that the country has to offer. I want to use my time in more or less kind of singling out the opportunity in manufacturing. And I think it has been well discussed that the share of manufacturing for our economy needs to be bigger. I think we all understand that. But I'd like to say that also that there is a tremendous opportunity given the tailwinds that the world today is facing, and we as India have the kind of relocation from China and so on. It is indeed a massive opportunity, and I think that sentiment continues to play out even into the future. We can see the discussions that are going on in the US elections and so on and so forth. I think that opportunity for us in India is here to grab, and we need to grab it with both our hands. However, having said that, this is not going to come to us simply by sitting or doing more of the same. And that's the first point I'd like to make. That the opportunity that we have as a country in manufacturing is doing a lot of different things. For example, take a look at electronics. Electronics today globally is about a $7 trillion trade. It's almost the same size as the global trade in services. It's the single largest opportunity that we in India, I would argue, has. But we don't have much of electronics manufacturing in the country. We need to build it bottom up. And I'll discuss some of that maybe in the subsequent kind of questions as well. But what's important really over here to see is that we've got to be bold and think scale. We cannot be looking at the opportunity in manufacturing if we are going to be incremental about the way we think, and we are going to be very, how should I say, doing more of the same, as I said. We've got to have the courage, and I call out here Indian industry as well as government to think radically differently if we've got to seize on the global opportunity that there is. Second, I think this is no longer just a question of a domestic market, but we're talking about global markets here. And therefore, so you made this point in the earlier discussion about meeting global standards, be it with respect not just quality, but the way of doing things, but the way of making goods. We've got to meet all the necessary standards and more if we really have to be able to compete. And I would argue we have a distinct advantage here because the manner in which we treat our people and our workforce is second to none. And I think we can make that to be a distinct differentiator as we compete onto the stage. Third, I think it's high time we focused on productivity than simply focused on lower cost. And I think that's a comment that has been made by some of my colleagues over here. But I think we've got to simply look at how do we make ourselves more competitive from a productivity standpoint and not just play up on the angle of a lower wage cost and so on and so forth. Fourth, our biggest advantage still clearly remains the size and scale of our workforce. But having said that, I would say that it's not so much skills which is the issue, but I think it is the more fundamental grounding of the workforce of that age group in terms of basic literacy, having some basic numeracy skills, having some ability to kind of think and reason things out, etc., and having discipline. If you can give me a workforce with those basic attributes, I can skill them the way I want in a span of maybe 3 to 6 months. But if those basic attributes are missing, then I'm afraid we are not going to be able to move forward. So just to finish in the first phase of this discussion, I think we've got to think about this radically differently, even when it comes to our workforce, by equipping them with the fundamental basics of education and so on and so forth, which is, I think, what will make them a lot more productive and a lot more useful going ahead. So let me just stop over here and say that the opportunity is immense, but we do need to look at things radically differently.
You know, as befitting the person who had the last word on this in this discussion, you did leave us with many important things to ponder over. And one of the things you said was we can't keep on doing more of the same, and a focus on excellence or scale is important. And third, you concluded you need a workforce with literacy and numeracy skills, etc. So to what extent, one of the qualities that sometime in the past, in the recent past, India used to take pride in, that about this concept of jugaad, how much has it helped or how much has it hurt the Indian private sector?
Well, now you're really putting me in a spot out here. But I would say, clearly it has some value and some benefits. But I would argue that the new opportunity that lies ahead of us, we haven't seen manufacture in this country that combines scale and precision and surface finish at the same time. If you have single factories that employ 50,000, 60,000 people in one go, I think it's got to be much more than jugaad. It's got to be a lot more systematic. It's got to have the right balance of automation as well as people skills, problem solving on an immediate basis, and so on and so forth. So we can maybe take some threads from jugaad, but I think when you begin to look at things completely differently, I would argue that we need a more systemic and a more process-driven approach.
Thank you. I think much as you were good in putting your answer diplomatically, I think the underlying message is also very clear that we need to move beyond that the jugaad mindset towards one that puts a premium on excellence and achieving efficiency and scale. Thank you very much. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, we have had all the four distinguished panelists giving us very interesting and diverse perspectives. We had Mr. Guruprasad talking about importance of skilling for his ability to raise Bosch India's share of exports. And then Mr. Sunil Mathur spoke about the fact that there were three elements which can still improve certain predictability in taxation and ability to ramp up production and also land acquisitions, etc. And we had Mr. Deepak Shetty saying that actually in his industry, that he seems to be on a good path of becoming indispensable to the global value chain in his particular space. And Mr. Agrawala telling us that we simply can't expect to achieve different results by doing more of the same. So you had four different perspectives and four different success stories or stories in the making, if I may say so. And we have about close to 20 minutes for you to pose your questions. And please keep your questions very crisp and short, and so that we can hear more from the participants rather than from ourselves. Thank you. The gentleman here.
One small question to all the participants. The total value of exports of goods and services in India was 766 billion last year, 2023. Exactly the same figure this year, 776 billion, with 24 billion addition in services and a 24 billion reduction in goods. And we are targeting 2 trillion by 2030. 6 years left, 20% annual rate of growth. How do we manage that?
To whom is your question directed at? Sorry?
to all the participants, because all are talking about exports.
So, which of you would like to? Actually, this is a question that should I? No, but questions to the moderator are not allowed.
You want me to give? So I think the numbers finally would be a consequence of how aggressively, and I go back to my point, does industry seize on the... I don't think there's a dearth of opportunity. There's more than enough opportunity. It's the question is how quickly and how boldly can industry seize on the opportunity to make it happen. And I think that's what will get us the results. Again, I go back to my point in electronics. Just the size of that opportunity is immense. You can do the math. Very quickly, you talk about billions just in a matter of few years. So I think the ball's more in our court.
Maybe I can add a little perspective on the auto part. Like I said a while ago, the overall value chain in the auto sector itself is heavily getting disrupted. And that also throws up lots of opportunities. I would like to highlight two of them, which we can sort of pick in terms of our growth in exports. One is a possible approach towards India being the last man standing. So when the combustion engines go down, and globally the volumes of that go down, and therefore manufacturing capacities and all the things around combustion engine manufacturing starts to wind down, we can take over quite a lot of this manufacturing in India and then be the one exporting into the world. So that's a thing many of the auto component makers and of course a lot of OEMs are also seriously looking at as a possible opportunity. Of course, now that was the sort of this making an opportunity out of the sunset. The opportunity out of sunrise is there is a lot of new technology coming in and a lot of new opportunities coming in on the electric vehicle space and of course all the technologies that get added on to the cars of the future. And there we can play a massive role in terms of engineering this and making components and making products for that. And of course, also electric vehicles are great levelers. There is no issue with regard to an electric vehicle produced in India being exported anywhere else as long as it meets the norms. Because the old world of combustion legislations around the world being different and being able to adapt to those norms are all gone in the electric vehicle world. So I'm sure a lot of our OEM colleagues are already thinking on these lines and this will also pave the way for us to export quite a lot more in addition to what Mr. Banmali said on electronics.
Thank you. Do I see any other hand going up? There's one right. The gentleman in the white shirt at the back, please.
My name is Rameshwar. What I understand from all the discussion that R&D and Jugaad thing you mentioned, that India, especially the smaller scale industry, I find it quality is a bigger concern to match the demand what Europe look for. How does the government or bigger industry is going to implement or put some process so that the smaller industry get a better quality so that the European standard can be matched?
Is your question directed at any particular individual on the stage?
Anybody can say, but I think Tata sir, I don't know.
So I think it's a very valid point. And again, I think this is a point so that you had made in the earlier session, that none of this is going to happen unless the small and medium enterprise sector also does extremely well and steps up to the challenge of doing things differently. Couldn't agree with you more. And I think here again, you will find that many large companies actually work along with the SMEs in order to improve their let's say, work practices, quality, making investments, and so on and so forth. So it is a question of working together to make sure that you deliver the ultimate objective. I would even go to the extent of saying that there are certain things that maybe are not happening in India at the moment, that you encourage younger entrepreneurs and smaller companies to take up those products, those services, and make sure that, look here, we can give you business, but you'll have to step up to the challenge of getting the quality right and so on and so forth. So clearly, I think it is something that the large and the small the SMEs have to work together.
You are lucky. Two more panelists want to give their responses to your question. Mr. Mathur, please, and then Mr. Shetty as well.
So I just want to build on what Banmali was just mentioning. I think it is clear, irrespective of how big the company is, unless the companies, the large companies, are able to integrate the small and medium enterprises into their operations, there's no way that the large companies can actually export products either. But this means, this integration process means, like he mentioned, it is up to the small and medium enterprises to take a step forward towards technology. Now, there is some things that the government can do, but a lot of it has to be the initiative taken by the small and medium enterprises. Technology adoption, innovation, these are huge areas that will enable small and medium enterprises to actually come to the table as part of the total supply chain. You mentioned in your earlier speech, sir, the question about the Mittelstand. And I think just taking a leaf out of that particular point, what made the Mittelstand the backbone of the German technology? It was innovation, innovation, innovation. They could not afford it, so institutes were created around them into which they could tap into. They had challenges with funding, so banking ecosystem was created to enable them to get into funding, get access to funding. But they then brought in an apprenticeship training program to ensure that everyone that came in was actually trained in their technologies, and so on and so forth. But these are initiatives that need to be taken both by the government, but more importantly by the small and medium enterprises themselves.
So I think industry has a big role to play, but I will answer your question very specifically. I think CII, Center of Manufacturing Excellence, is doing a stellar job here. Last year I had an opportunity to chair. More than 500 MSME partners participated, and I was absolutely delighted to see the quality of work which has been done, how they have been moved up the value chain. So I would really request you to connect with our colleagues from CII. I think some brilliant work is happening, and I'm just giving that one example. And it was very heartening to see small companies coming up with examples of how they have enhanced their productivity or quality. So I can assure you some very good work is being done, and really compliments to the CII team who is working very closely with the industry on this.
Thank you. There is this gentleman here in the front row, please, and then there is, first here, and then I'll come to you, sir, after that.
Good afternoon, sir. Mr. Guruprasad just spoke about electric vehicle manufacturing space, and in electric vehicles, the cost of the lithium-ion battery, that is the most important part. Exporting the electric vehicles or batteries, now what I understand is a little far off because of the cost effectiveness of the Indian industry. Cost is, the duty is a very important part of the cost element. And what we understand that the customs duty on the import of the lithium-ion cells is much lower than the raw material or the capital goods which are required to manufacture those lithium-ion cells. Sir, my question is also to you, although you are the moderator, how the ministries in the government act integratedly on the import and export duty structure so that Indian manufacturers can achieve the optimum cost as against the foreign exporters.
So with respect to your second question, which is addressed to me,
Sir.
I'll acknowledge that it's a very good question. And I will now turn to my panelists on the right to answer.
Yeah, I don't want to speak on behalf of the government, but certainly I think the problem you highlight is a problem that's existing across multiple segments and sectors, not just with electric vehicles, but how the duty is and how inverse it is in certain areas. It's certainly acknowledged and recognized. And the only thing, at least we've been doing, is go through ACMA in our case, or CIAM, and go through CII and represent to the government and try and get a reversal and fight over it. So that's what I would recommend. But maybe Mr. Banwali wants to add anything specifically with regard to Tata Motors or...
Nothing more that I have to add with the CA sitting here.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Gentleman over there, please.
Good afternoon, sir. I am Rajiv from Texmaco, and I represent the freight industry. In fact, there is a lot of expansion happening of late in the railways in both passenger and the freight segment. And we have definitely come out with the Vande Bharat and many more models. Similar kind of scope is there in the freight industry, where we are looking for many more kind of wagons, and definitely a big scope for the exports to the European and African markets. Not only the wagons, I mean, we can export a lot of components as well. So what are the plans? And my question is to Mr. Mathur, how exactly we can take it forward, and what do you feel the way the auto components are expanding, what more we can do it in the railway segment so that it can be taken further? Thank you.
So I think it's a good question. There is a huge opportunity, particularly in the railway segment, to be able to take our products globally. Couple of things I think we still need to work on within the railways. One is the standards, making sure that we are able to deliver to global standards. The second is the supply chain within the country. Everything is not available yet within the country in terms of components. We still have to import quite a lot. The third is, of course, the access to the global markets. Are we able to get in with our references into the global market? That takes time. Getting your product approved by the local authorities, the homologation process and all that takes time. It has begun in a lot of places. Indian products are already being exported. We are exporting a lot of our locomotives, bogies outside as well. So yes, it can be done, but we need to get the supply chain internally right. We need to get the cost position to the right level as well. And standards is the most critical part.
There is a lady out there who wants to ask a question, please.
Sir, this is for you. What can India do
to me?
Yeah.
No, I think the questions are only addressed to the panelists, please.
Anybody who would like to answer it. What can India do to achieve the universal health coverage, and do we expect the private sector to take lead in it?
Universal health coverage. This is a panel on global value chains in India, so I thought maybe this question can be taken up offline, if you don't mind. So I'm told that we have to wind up in about a minute. So there's a gentleman here who already has the mic. Please, sorry about that. Yeah. Could you please keep it as short as possible in order to finish on time? Thank you.
So my name is Shekhar Joshi. I'm from Mumbai. I work for the Japanese company. This is for the three exporters, the Shetty sir and Siemens and this. So basically my question to you is that, are you offering the same quality of product in India when you're supplying to the Indian customers? Is it the same quality of product? Because we are entering into India and we are facing too much of problem because of Sasta Sundar Tikau concept what we have, and it is ingrained in the Indian mind. So wherever we go, we say, oh, Japanese too costly, too costly, too costly. So it's bit difficult for us. So I said, means, is it something easy to export but difficult to sell the quality product in India or in Indian market? Or that is what the question mark in my mind. So since you are the leading exporters and having so much of sell in export sell, I just want to know your thought.
Just keep it short, yeah.
Yeah, I think thanks for asking that question. You made my day. I can assure you that the quality of the product which is given to the Indian customer and to the export customer is absolutely the same. The reason being, in none of our factories we have an export line. And the associate who is building that machine does not know whether it is going to Kolkata or to Cincinnati. And that is how the quality is there, and that is why the Indian customer continuously gets benefit of a global quality.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very quickly, just one word answer from each one of you. What is that one thing that India has to do to ascend to the peak of the global value chain? Just one thing, starting with you.
I think adhering...
Just one word.
Global quality standards and improving on those standards continuously.
Thank you. And you?
I would say continuous improvement on ease of doing business.
Okay.
Innovation.
Last but not the least.
Basic education.
Basic education. So we had 4 different answers and 4 different priorities to pursue. My sincere thanks to all of you for being very active participants in this session, and also to my distinguished panelists for making it illuminating, enriching, as well as valuable, and sharing their valuable perspectives. Please put your hands together for my panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this great discussion. May I request our session chair? Okay, let's take a photograph. Thank you. May I request our session chair, Dr. Nageshwaran, to please present a token of appreciation to all our esteemed panelists. Thank you. Thank you so much. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of the CII Annual Business Summit 2024. Thank you so much for your presence and your participation, and we wish you a great evening. Thank you.